He's got like 15 other songs. That's all right. Go. Huh? Oh, no. We're not doing all that. Welcome out this morning. We're going to begin with a song of praise, and then we'll get into our Bible study. Let's sing that song, Jesus Lifted Higher. Jesus, we're lifting you higher, shining upon me. Praising with angels in heaven. All I want is to worship you. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to hear from your word. I pray that you'd bless this time and your name be glorified in Jesus' name. Amen.
Praise the Lord. Good to see you this morning. Appreciate you being out to Adult Bible Hour. And great to be back amongst God's people in God's land. Looking forward to God's future and God's destiny. Can you say amen? If you have a Bible, we're in the book of Joshua chapter 4. Joshua chapter 4, verse 4 through 7. We are in the closing chapters of this long series. And I've got a couple of things to cover today, next week, maybe the week after, then we'll be finished and getting on with something else. It has seemed like a bit of a marathon season, especially with a couple of breaks in between for travel. Joshua chapter 4, verses 4 through 7. We won't read it. Can you put the verses on the board for me, please, Wes, when you get the chance? And this is Memorial Stones, a series done by Pastor Greg Mitchell to great acclaim around the world and a great help to our fellowship. And a great amount of time in research and looking up all those things and putting that together there. And I have heard along the grapevine he may be trying to put that into a book form and making that available on a wider scale. But he said at some point during that series it would be good to do that in local areas and to see where you've come from. We've been doing that over the last numbers of months. And this is simply Joshua crossing the Jordan. God says, take stones out of the Jordan, built one memorial in the water, on the dry riverbed that would be covered by water, things that are convictions, your DNA, things on the inside. And we said, especially when you go out to pioneer, these are the things that will naturally occur and should naturally occur when you're out pioneering. And then also one set up beside the river that your children can ask, where have we come from? And you'll have an idea of where you've come from, what we've been doing, and where we're up to. So the series I stopped this that we had last week was with the Pastor David on the church blueprint. The week before that, we spoke about boot camp. We did boot camp. We showed the summary video. I also spoke about the big day outreach, and because it's specifically for younger people, and the majority of our congregation would not be involved in the big day outreach. We spoke about that, and we're going to show this summary video from last year just to give you an idea of gathering together in the building, morning prayer, breakfast, a rallying sermon last year by Pastor Paul Boddy before they split up into groups and go to 6 pioneer churches in the morning for a street outreach, 6 in the afternoon for a street outreach, and then each of those 12 churches have an outreach event in the evening. And so you can get direct feedback on how they've gone during the day, people that have visited and people saved. And then we have a youth rally back here. So it's a big day for the under 25s, under 21s last year. And this is going to be the summary video for you. Just a couple of minutes.
It's E-Piano.
that's the big day outreach. That's last year's. I mentioned this used to be from 15 to 25 was the age bracket. The numbers grew excessive, so we dropped it down to 15 to 21. So everybody you see there theoretically is 15 to 21. Then we ran short of drivers and had to get some people to help drive those younger people today. Used to be, I'm not sure, used to be when I was growing up that when you turned 17 you got your license and you bought a car. I'm not sure what's happening in this generation, but a lot of 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 25-year-olds, no car, no license. But anyway, that's the big day outreach. We do those once a year, and that's coming up again this year in October. And Pastor Evangelist Adam Porter is going to be the guy doing the speaking on that day. He's going to do a revival here in the city, in the church here. And that is that. Wes, did you find those New Year's Eve photos? Put one up for me. Perfect. All right. One of the events, you can leave that up there. One of the events that has been a once a year staple for us over many, many years from when I first got here, I think, back in about 1990 or so, was one of the couples from our congregation here had a large property out at Leppington. And they had like a home barbecue there on New Year's Eve. And then as the numbers of churches and the number of people began to grow, that home barbecue began to grow exponentially. And thankfully they had a large property. We used to have there was hay rides, there was soccer matches, there were illegal fireworks, there were water bombs, dry ice bombs, all manner of things going off there at the house there. And then when the New Year's Eve fell on a service day, we'd hold a church service and set it up. It used to be in their double garage. That's how big the fellowship was back then, in the double garage. And then it began to grow up. And I don't know if this is the last one we did or certainly towards the end of that era. But then we had church services outside on their driveway, where they had a basketball ring set up, and we'd have a church service there. It was kind of a great way at the end of the year for all the churches to get together, either just for a barbecue and a fellowship or for church services when that particular event fell on a church service day. Another photo, Wes, if you have it there. Another photo, and then another one. And then there's just one more, I think. All right, that's the... So again, a great event put on by one of the couples from our congregation that lived out at Leppington. And then eventually, just by size, it just outgrew, its ability to be an event, and for the one family to put the event on and their house and all that kind of stuff. Parking became an issue, safety, other issues arose, and it has now ceased. But that was one of the events that we would have been known for from Parramatta, and obviously in the Sydney area for many, many years, decades at least, those New Year's Eve barbecues out at that couple's house. Okay, the next one is marriage retreats, marriage weekends and seminars. As long as I can remember, back into the early 90s, we were holding marriage retreats and marriage seminars, and they were at various times during the year whenever it seemed suitable. Pastor Darrell Elliott and his wife Gillian were pioneering a church in the Campbelltown area. They were here from the late 80s. And so the earliest ones that I recall, and somebody could correct me, but the earliest ones I recall was at the prestigious 5-star Macklin Lodge down there at Campbelltown. And we used to have them down there, had some marriage retreats down there, and that was a reasonable place to start. We moved from there up into the Parramatta area. We had them at what used to be the Travel Lodge over at Rose Hill. That's now, I think, a Mantra Hotel there over by the Rose Hill Racecourse. We went to the Travel Lodge. Other places, one of the longer term places was the Holiday Inn in Parramatta, and booked rooms there. It came with breakfast. And like all of these things, they began modestly, if I could put it that way, just 25, 30 couples would come out, and we were very, very easy accommodated in small rooms. It got larger we outgrew the Holiday Inn. They used to have to try and have breakfast in 3 sessions, and the older couples that would get up earlier could have breakfast earlier. Then the younger couples who have to sleep longer would have breakfast later. It just became overwhelming. And so we had those in right up until before COVID. Missed a couple of years through COVID. And then somebody suggested to me, Pastor Walsh, have you ever thought about doing them out of town? And I said, well, I have thought about doing them out of town, but I like them in Parramatta because it seems like most people then can get there for a Friday night. They don't have to take a day off work. They could work, maybe get a little early mark from work. We get there on a Friday night for the seminar, be there for Saturday with the breakfast and so forth. And so that was the way that it went. And so then last year, this year for the very first time, we decided to move it north, and I assumed we wouldn't get that many people there, but that was certainly a misnomer. The reason we have marriage seminars, and this is just a little bit of a doctrine to add in here, is the way the family goes, so goes society, and certainly so goes the church. That one of the things about pioneering a church is when a church begins to have single people that get married, have children, when couples come and begin to form part of the congregation, that adds credibility, it adds dignity, it adds a weight to the congregation. And so, but as couples go, as marriages go, so goes the church, and so goes society. Can I get somebody over here to get for me Psalms 127 and verse number 1, please? Michael, can you give me Psalms 127? Verse number 1, we have some other verses for the next study, but an emphasis on strong couples and strong marriages is something that is certainly biblical. As soon as you get that, Michael, can you read it out, please? Psalms 127 and verse number 1.
Unless the Lord builds the house, its builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over a city, the watchman stays alert in vain.
Here the Bible makes a link between a family and a city. And that's a deliberate link that the psalmist is giving us there, that's written by David, and saying literally, as the family goes, so goes the city, so goes society. And I won't belabor it for other settings, but if you begin to look up the decline of the family in society and the increase in crime, the increase in drug and alcohol abuse, the increase in people going to jail, they are well and truly connected. And you can look at that statistically. We don't need to look at statistics. It's in the Bible there. God building the house and God guarding a city, they go together. And like I said, we used to do them in Parramatta because I thought we'd get the most couples there. And so we made the mistake this year of booking in the Hunter Valley just 85 rooms. And we thought that we kind of have over 100 in the Parramatta area. And so increased price further away from the city, we thought that people wouldn't be that interested. We were blown away. And we had 135 rooms, 125 rooms up in the double what we'd booked. And that caused the crisis for the hotel. And we had to use 3 hotels last year in order to accommodate that. We're kind of racing around finding accommodation up there. And then we squeezed into that quite tight squeeze into the conference room there. This is a couple of pictures from the marriage retreat this year. And so if you were single, this is coming attractions. If you weren't able to get that, you can obviously check this out next year in February. We'll do it again. Another photo there, another one there, and then we have one brief video to show of the marriage retreat.
Kids, there's no soft touch, hard touch, good cop, bad cop, no Jekyll and Hyde, the united front in every issue. And so the question raised here comes from...
So there's a better part of 150 couples that were there. Some stayed there, others stayed in other locations, came to the seminars. And so these are the marriage retreats. And so we're doing that again next year, the beginning of February, around about the first weekend of February. We've made some announcements about that. There's a poster on the back wall there. And one of the 3 places we used this year was the Ridges up there at Hunter Valley, and so this year all the rooms will be there. They gave us a good rate on the rooms with the breakfast. They also gave us a reasonable rate on the conference room, and so we're going there next year. So keep an eye on that. Pray about it. Save some money. Set the weekend aside. And that'll be a blessing too. We also have been doing a couples seminar once a year, typically every year, sometimes every second year, for those married less than 7 years. And we do that on a Friday night here in Parramatta. And the ladies put a nice dinner on, or a nice supper on for the couples married less than 7 years, and we preach to them and help them with the starting of their married life. Any quick questions there? Yes, Bach, where you go?
These weekends are great. You targeting, meeting the needs of different groups of people in the church, the married group, the young single group, and the men's group. Question about, like, if you're not careful, we can start, to have too many groups that, or I don't know how to phrase this question, but what can we stop becoming, like, organize these things and, just to take every sub-niche, every group of the church and, forgetting the main things? Is there a drawing line, that we can decide?
Yeah, it's certainly a tension that you have to keep an eye on. Not every special interest group needs a special event or a special time or special seminars. You're exactly right. And some of the things that we've been doing over the years that have been meeting needs, we're adjusting those as time goes by because they serve their purpose. One of the things this year, and we're going to face it again next year, is the area-wide rallies. Is that without renting outside venues, we just can't fit them in for a rally. And so we had over 500 with Pastor Mitchell the other year, and then this year we said, okay, no kids from 12 years of age and under from any of the churches. It was a recommendation last year, which nobody took my recommendation. And so this year it was enforced. I'm going to have security guards at the door. I'm going to have security on black T-shirts. We're checking passports. We're checking birth certificates. There shall be no under 12s here in the building, which we did and had over 500 in the building. And so it just becomes impossible to. So that's going to, the area-wide rallies are going to kind of go away, I guess. And we'll have a rally here for Parramatta churches. There'll be a rally in Fairfield for Fairfield Church, a rally in Hurstville for Hurstville churches, which is the way you want it to go. You want those guys to have their own dignity and build their own thing and create their own problems in size in those buildings. And so that's the way that goes. No, we don't do a lot of extra stuff, and we try not to expand the program, so to speak, where we're spending a lot of time in-reaching and not enough time outreaching. But as long as we're holding street evangelism on a regular basis, we're holding outreach concerts on a regular basis, we're holding revivals on a regular basis, then we're keeping the tension about right. But again, from time to time, we have to review that and make sure we got the right tension. Good question. Somebody else? Yes.
So one of the features of the marriage weekends used to be the marriage games. Do you miss your role as a game show host? And do you have any particular highlights, cringeworthy or otherwise?
Well, you have to go to a marriage retreat to see that in operation. And I had no problems being a game show host. Sometimes the people in my family that were helping me, perhaps scoring or those kinds of things, become a bit of it's a complex subject. Not one I'm prepared to bring up right now until Anne's had a few nights' sleep after traveling back from America. But no, they had their place. And so in those ones there, we typically had one seminar Friday morning, one Saturday night, one Friday morning, one Friday, one Saturday morning. And so you had kind of 90 minutes, and in that time we had more time for games. And there was the marriage game, there was those kinds of things which were great fun. So the marriage game is a couple of things we used to do. One was you put the name of somebody, you put your name on a piece of paper and a gold coin donation into a bucket, and then out of that bucket we took 5 couples, and we played the marriage game with those 5 couples. Well, as time went by, I had people putting in $20 and 10 names of somebody else, and not them, and then that person would find out they're going to put in $10 and 5 names of that couple, and so large amounts of money, small pool of couples that people wanted to see on the platform. And so then we used to put the 5 wives outside it, and then the 5 men are there. We asked them 5 questions about their wife, favorite color, where they went to school, some things that only a husband should know about their wife, like their birthday, and then the wives would come in and answer the same questions with obviously what was true, because it's her, it's what she thinks is the favorite color, favorite food, and so forth, and then the husbands went outside, did the same with the wives, and that was quite good fun. The other one we had was the Battle of the Sexes, where we have all the girls on one side, all the men on the other side, smaller crowds, and it ran a little bit like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and we asked questions of the women that typically were questions the men should know the answer to. And so what is a Stedin? Or a Steeden? Anyway, so that's my point exactly. So, but we had to pull a name out. They all had a raffle ticket number, so you pull a name out of that. That person stood up. And let's just say it was Di. She stands up. We ask her the question. There's silence in the room. The girls can't call out because they're all Christians. And we ask her the question. And then for her group, the women, they could either ask their row, they could ask their pastor's wife, or they could phone a friend. And we went back and forth between the men and the women. And we had a winner who won the Battle of the Sexes. But in all of those, my wife was the scorer. And so we're kind of moving things along. Who's coming first? And so she would play her role, and we would sleep in separate bedrooms for about a month after every marriage retreat, which is kind of not serving the purpose. But anyway, that was the. But then we changed the schedule to Friday nights and 2 on Saturday morning, which means we didn't have the flexibility of time any longer. And that's why when we did that, we changed those things and took the game part out of it, and we pretty much just had straight seminars. Yes, Kathy?
I think there also each session was on a different topic, and one of them was children years ago. I think that's changed recently. Is that right? And is there a reason?
The answer is no, it hasn't changed recently, and no, there isn't a reason.
I just don't recall like a particular topic on, like someone's preaching on raising children.
Sure, and again, that could be true. We used to have a visiting speaker in. They would do the marriage retreat. They would do then an area-wide rally, and then they'd do a revival from Sunday through Thursday for the Parramatta church. And the feedback I got was that the benefits of the marriage retreat were usually lost by about Tuesday night of the revival. And so, and we just kind of massaged that a little bit. And so then I had some people come in just for the weekend, and that was a benefit. And then during COVID, we just had 3 local preachers preaching. And so that's there. And we typically don't. We do communicate a little bit on what we preach on, what subject we're going to preach on, but the subject of kids hasn't come up. When I go away to preach marriage seminars, which is on a reasonably regular basis, I always have it in the back of my mind if I'm doing 3 or 4 seminars to do one on kids, and do that as part of the marriage retreat. But no, you're right. We don't have a schedule for every seminars on kids. Nor did I have every visiting preacher. Nor did I request from them to preach on kids at one point, but if they felt to, they would. Very good. Somebody else? Yes, Greg.
Pastor, it's just a question in regards to the previous statement about outgrowing this building and having to do the other way. Is there any update on another building, bigger for us?
Not at this stage. There's no update other than we're looking. We're praying about it. We're speaking to the council about that. We're putting money aside for that. It's still just slightly outside of our reach at the moment for the kind of building that we want to buy and plan to be there for 10 years or so. So we're just moving towards that as best we can. Somebody at conference, I think, asked me about, would I buy a building? Would the church buy a building that was large enough to seat conference? And my response was probably not. In other words, if we bought a building, for instance, that would seat 1,500 people, then most Sundays we would have 180. And you've got a massive facility that I can't justify the cost of for 1 week a year. And so typically we're going to buy a building. When we buy a building, it will be to facilitate local growth, but it's unlikely to be large enough, unless God works a miracle, it's unlikely to be large enough to host the conferences. And so the conferences once a year will likely always be, or for the foreseeable future, outside like it is at Stanhope. But that's in the prayer list. Amen. And I hope it's in your prayer list. I'm sure it is. All right, next one is conferences. And so these began, our conferences, and I've been, as I'm researching back and looking at these from now 30 years ago, I am looking back at a mysterious era, is what I could call it, is that somehow we just started having conferences in 1995. Our church would have been, I don't know, 40 or 50 people, I guess. And obviously spoke to Pastor Maston at that particular point, the national leader, and he approved of us having conferences. So we had conferences here very early on in the piece, and we're planting churches out of the conference from our church and any church that wanted to be planted. We just planted them out. And so, again, a little mysterious era. I don't know all the details of how that happened. But they started in the salubrious Granville Town Hall. And all I can say is that the conferences had a rough start there in the Granville Town Hall. I think I've got one picture there from the Granville Town Hall. Wes? That's a video. Was there a picture? Okay. That's it. That's the Granville Town Hall. Want to put it back up again? Just pause it at the end, anywhere there. Okay, that's the Granville Town Hall, right over there, over the Granville Bridge. Anybody who's been around for 40 years, I guess, or more would remember the Granville Bridge disaster. A train going from Parramatta through Granville into the city hit the bridge there, and I'm going to say 184 people died, or 84 people died there. And so this would be about 50 meters from that bridge right there in Granville. And it had the smell of urine that no amount of bleach would remove. And I think the bathrooms are up behind the stage on the left-hand side there. And it was just kind of, it had a rough start, is all I can tell you. Could you get a picture of that trumpet there, please, Wes? It was the first picture in the document of those notes. It's a spread of about 44 pastors. And so again, that picture there is from 1995. That's about the size of the Sydney Fellowship at that particular time. And at that point, there was 2 churches in Sydney. There was a church in Wollongong, Newcastle, and Lismore. Just show you got the trumpet there? All right, there we go. This is a Trumpet magazine, which was the kind of the local Australian magazine back in those days. And in fact, there was a national magazine with a picture from Australia back in those days. This Trumpet magazine is 87 to 89, somewhere in that vicinity. And there are 44 churches in Australia. And so you can count those up. You can look at that. You can maybe find There's some people that you might know there. Good-looking couple down the bottom, third from the left. That's the pastor from Bunbury. He's there, 87 to 89, somewhere in that vicinity. So the Australian Fellowship, about 44 churches, 87 to 88, 89, somewhere around that. And at that point, there was 2 churches in Sydney, as well as Wollongong, Newcastle, and Lismore. We arrived in 1990. We've already mentioned that. The church in Liverpool, Newcastle, Campbelltown, Bankstown, Cogra, Burwood, Wollongong, and also the Rotniaks in Penrith. And so that was the size of the Sydney Fellowship when we arrived in 1990. And then in 1995, the very first conference we held, that was the footage that you saw there in the video that Wes showed. In 1995, we launched Pat and Kathy Edwards into Blacktown. I think there's a photo of those guys being launched into Blacktown. Right underneath the trumpet picture. Next in line will be the picture of Pat and Kathy into Blacktown. There we go. All right. So that's Pat 30 years ago. We've hidden Kathy. And so that's Pat 30 years ago. That's me 30 years ago, by the way. And so we're launching them into Blacktown. One of the things about the conference in 1995, we had Pastor Mike Maston over, the national leader, and he was over to do the conference. And after the Monday night, I saw him in the back of the thing, and he was telling somebody, this place is scary. And so I thought to myself, we can only do better from here. And that was the national leader saying that the conference was scary. That was the beginning. There's probably a couple of hundred people in the building via the video there. Like I said, a very bad smell. And on one of the nights, we went outside there, and somebody had on the windscreen of every car had put down some quite serious documents on anti-tithing. And Pastor Jack Rockabuta said that he found those out there. So if you find the culprit, do what you think is necessary. But thankfully for the culprit, he wasn't caught that night. And so interesting times there. We did the same thing again the following year, 1996. And there's some crowd shots, I think, from 1996, all things being equal. All right, that's the crowd shot. They had kind of a mezzanine at the back of the hall we didn't use. And so looking down upon the crowd there, just hold it there. That's the second one, 1996. That was the theme of the conference there. And there's a close-up of a stage shot. That one there. And at the 1996 conference on the Friday night, we planted 4 churches, or the conference planted 4 churches. A couple called Aaron and Mary Jane Henley Martin came out of Wollongong into Hornsby. Bruce and Gail Cornish came out of Newcastle, went to Pioneer in Manly. Craig and Monique Chapman out of Cogra into Liverpool. And Malcolm and Fiona Anderson were launched out of the Penrith congregation into Chatswood. That happened back there in 1996. And so we moved from, we couldn't do any more in the Granville Town Hall, despite its attractive pricing structure, which is fairly cheap at the time there. We couldn't tolerate that again. We went from the Granville Town Hall to the Liverpool Events Centre. Over there in Liverpool, we did that 1997, 1998. We went to the Holiday Inn at Rooty Hill. We had some significant conferences there. One preacher put the whole conference to sleep. And that was a significant conference, so boring, 10 keys to revival, and I don't think anybody survived more than 3 keys. And so I don't know if the other 4 through 10 were better, but he put us all to sleep that day. And so that was at the Rooty Hill, at the Holiday Inn at Rooty Hill. Then we went to the Sunnybrook Hotel in Warwick Farm. We were there for quite a number of years there. And you can ask some people about some of the announcements that I made there during the prayer requests. And you can ask them in a private moment when the kids aren't around about how I presented some prayer requests there in the Warwick Farm, Sunnybrook Hotel, then to Bowman Hall in Blacktown. We had a couple of limited conferences during the COVID era here in the Parramatta Church, and then we've been in the Stanhope Gardens, the 3 basketball courts out there at Stanhope, and we're going to be there again this year in September. Okay, I'm going to show a couple of videos. Do you have those videos there, Wes? Don't show it yet. Vid 1. It was called Vid 1, Liverpool Event Centre. Don't show it yet. You got it? You got Vid 2, 3 and 4? All right, we're good to go. All right, so Liverpool Event Centre, we were able to get some footage from back there, something like 1997, so this is 28 years ago, and the conference had moved again from the Granville Town Hall into the Liverpool Event Centre, and you can show that first video, please. And while you're doing that, you might see if you can find a young Theo, a young Craig and Raylene Holford, and even a young Sharon Bourne in the video.
And we use God's word like a two-edged sword against the enemy. Emmanuel, we're marching in your name. Emmanuel has risen again.
All right, so that's about 28 years ago. I've also just in screenshotting some video there. There was actually a famous church report was given there that if it had been caught on video, and it may even be caught on video, we haven't just actually found it yet, but it was a famous church report about a guy who came from the west to pioneer in one of the country towns, and got him to give a report on what God was doing in the area. And so he got up and said, well, it's been a bit of a struggle, to be honest with you. All my kids are backslidden, and I couldn't get a job. And then I got a job in a printing factory, but that was a bit of a struggle. They had me printing pornography. And so, but after 6 months of asking the boss, they put me on gardening. And so that was a good thing. And Pastor Walsh was very nice to me. He sent an impact team and a band down to help us. But I was so desperate for fellowship, I said, forget the outreach, let's just have fellowship. And so, he was giving this report. It was like a stand-up comedy. It went about 8.5 minutes. And people were leaving the building because they couldn't sit in a crowd. They were laughing so much. And then eventually my wife couldn't handle it any longer. She went out the back there, and there was about 30 people out there rolling on the floor, laughing at that poor man's report. Anyway, he didn't last very long, and he made his way back to Adelaide, as a matter of fact. Didn't make it all the way back to Perth. Okay, I'll get some screenshots. And this is, again, some young people you might remember. Anyone know who these guys are? There's the photos, Wes. There's 3 photos at the bottom of the document. All right, anybody know who that is? Okay, Dave and Doreen, another one. There's Pastor Jack Rockabuta and his wife Anne-Marie. Pastor Jack was saved in the Adelaide Church, the Prospect Church. And he was a Fijian international rugby player, went across to play rugby in Adelaide, got saved, and married Anne-Marie. They had 3 children, and he eventually came and pioneered a church in Bankstown. And after Bankstown, he came and was an evangelist in the Parramatta congregation, and then went and pioneered a church in Fiji. And he pioneered the very first church in Fiji back many years ago. And unfortunately, he died of cancer something like 20 years ago. And Anne-Marie, I see her at conference every couple of years over in America. She married a Christian man from one of our churches over there in America, and carries on serving God in that capacity. And then one last one. Thankfully, they're not here. They're still at conference. And but anyway, that's a young Rod Gibson playing guitar or bass in the band from Newcastle that were performing at the conference. Okay, a couple more videos. You can look at these here and see if you can spot Pastor Darrell Elliott in this one. Video number 2. One of the pastor's daughters is reading a book. They were going to be very exciting. And anyway, Luke was there as well. All right, the next one there. That was the special music, and again, we're back in those days. We were doing our best and to plant churches and to do what we did as a fellowship. We did that from over here in Sydney many years ago. Then the last one again is out of the Liverpool Event Centre, and we're announcing a couple from Lismore into Port Macquarie. The Smelavides were coming from Burwood into Parramatta as evangelists, and Peter and Fiona Edwards were going from Parramatta into Burwood. There's a quick shot of that. Then as normal, we would lay hands on them, pray for them, and ordain them into the ministry. Any quick questions there? Any quick questions? Conferences, Granville Town Hall, Liverpool Event Centre, and then we moved on from there to where we are at the Stanhope Gardens currently. Anybody? Oh, okay, a little church planting history from back in those days. Alex and Robin Smelavides were out of Scarborough in those days. They pioneered a church in Newtown, and coming from the west, didn't realize what kind of nuts live in Newtown. And so he began in Newtown, could only attract really weird people. And so one Sunday he must have got the okay from his pastor in Perth, and so he just simply didn't show up and just shut the building down and moved to Ashfield. And then he said he was pioneering in Ashfield there a number of months later, and some of the nuts found him. And they said, Pastor, what happened to you? We were looking for you, we couldn't find you, and now we've found you. I want to tell everybody where you are and bring them over here too. And so he moved then from Ashfield to Burwood and spent quite a bit of time there in Burwood. He was in Burwood. Ray Salem got saved there as a teenager. Pastor Theo got saved. He was in a maths, one of Pastor Smelovitis' maths classes. He got saved back in those days. And so Pastor Smelovitis was there in that church there in Burwood, and then he felt called to evangelism. Pastor Masson decided it was best for him to be in the Sydney area, and so wanted him to come into Parramatta Church and be an evangelist from here. We had prior to that already had, I think, Pastor Avista may have been an evangelist here, Pastor Rockabuta, back in the Burnside school days. Others from back in those days. Pastor Elliott was an evangelist back in the Parramatta, in the Burnside Public School hall days. But Pastor Smelly wanted to be an evangelist, and so he's going to be in Parramatta. And Pastor Masson didn't have anybody to put in there, and it was a smaller congregation still in the hall. And so he said he didn't have anybody to put in there, but if we would put somebody in there from Parramatta, he was happy to make that a Parramatta congregation. So as we did, we put the Edwards in there, and they took over that church in Fairfield, and eventually moved it from Burwood to Fairfield in a hall, in an industrial building that burnt down. The only thing that remaining was the vision statement that we have on the back wall there, and then a couple of moves into the city before Pastor Tony took it out to where they are currently in Wetherill Park and looking for larger facilities. And so that's the Smelovitises and the Fairfield congregation. There was a similar story back for the Canberra congregation, is that the Canberra congregation was pioneered by Phil and Jan East, followed by John and Sue Brown. Some of you may remember some of these guys. Then a guy from the congregation, Joel and Janine, his wife Dawson, took over from the congregation, and then he went down into Melbourne area, and Dave and Marty Brown, who were Newcastle, then were Footscray. They were placed in there. They were assisting Pastor Tilly in Footscray. They took over the Canberra congregation, and then things, I guess, weren't going that well, and so Pastor Tilly wanted the Browns back in Footscray, and basically they told Pastor Payne, we're closing the church down, and that was what they were going to do. And so a guy from the congregation that I'd known for many, many years, Darren Hagenson, which is Pastor Greg's brother. He'd been there in Canberra for 10 years in that congregation, and he called me up and said, Pastor Walsh, they're closing the church down, and what do you think we need to do, and so forth. And he said, I think Pastor Craig Holford could take it over. And so we need to call Pastor Payne and lay out your case before him. He'll no doubt call me, and we'll work something out, what we can do. And that's exactly what happened. Pastor Payne called me. Would I stand behind Pastor Craig or Craig Holford to become the pastor? I said yes, known for many, many years, him and his wife, his family, and they would be very, very good replacements there for the Browns in Canberra. And Pastor Payne again said, like before, I have nobody to go in there. We're going to close the church down. If you want to put a man in there and take responsibility, you can do that. And that's exactly what happened. And so the Holfords are there even to this day. Like I said, Rudy Hill, then Warwick Farm, Bowman Hall, Blacktown, Parramatta during the COVID, and then Stanhope Gardens, where we're currently holding our conferences. Any quick questions on conferences, church planting, where churches came from, why it is that way that it is, what's the historical reason for churches being as they are, where they are, how they are? Any quick questions on that before we move on? Alex?
Do you think there's a danger as we continue to get bigger that we lose a little bit of that pioneer spirit or how things used to be? Definitely not reflecting on the good old days, but is there anything that we ought to be making sure we hang on to from those early days that we don't lose in future as we continue to grow and multiply?
I'm not sure that attractive. We wouldn't want to lose some of those things, and so you're right. But again, like I was saying in some other situations, growth and development and church planting simply move us to another arena. And in pioneering churches, everybody shakes everybody's hand. And so, and then at some point, I tell them, you're going to have you're too large just to shake everybody's hand every service. It takes you half the day, and then people get upset because you didn't shake their hand, and it becomes a whole scene. Part of growth is you give away to shake everybody's hand, and now we shake a couple of hands and we sit down. We get on with the rest of the service. And so then some people, we miss the shaking of hands. Well, again, I'd rather grow out of that into something larger and with more influence than remain in the thing. And there are some churches, I guess, around our fellowship that are stuck. And the reason they're stuck is a congregation's unwillingness to grow up and become adult Christians in an adult congregation. Which, again, it's a little harsh for me to say that, but that's really the matter. They just like it small. They have no real desire to grow. They like knowing everybody. They fellowship in the same places, do the same things all the time. And unless they break out of that, they'll never be all that God wants them to be. Yes?
I remember many years in the Burnside Public School Hall, we used to hold hands across the whole congregation for prayer. And I was wondering when that started and why it ended.
It must have been a Catholic thing, I guess, somewhere along the... I don't know. When I got saved, that was it. And then Pastor Mitchell read a book. I'm going to say it was by Morrow, but the book was called Why Men Hate Going to Church. And one chapter was on holding hands. And that was it. That was it. Holding hands was gone. And so, I don't know originally where it came from. Obviously, we came from four square. A lot of the things in the early days were four square principles that we simply didn't know any different, and we just did those things. But as time went by, we unshackled ourselves from some of those things. And so the holding hands was one. How many miss holding hands in prayer? Not me. Okay, good. So we won't be a holding hands congregation. We'll press on just praying. Very good. Good question, though. Somebody else? Yes.
When it comes to church planning, Pastor, back in the early days, when you planted people out, did you just take like a risk, or did you have like a roadmap to, okay, say this person, and then has it evolved over time now? Like, for example, you know exactly what to look for in someone to plan them out, to know that they're not going to, kind of blow it up? Or is there like a specific, how do you know if someone's like ready, and is there like a risk that you take, or is it, for sure if you plan out that person?
Well, I'll take those 8 questions one at a time. So the first one is it's always a risk. When I was planted out into my congregation in Bunbury, it's a risk. When Pastor Masson, when I came here to pioneer, but Pastor Masson put me into the Marylands church, it's a risk. Every church is a risk. And so you're not planting people out that you think are going to fail. You think they're going to succeed, but you're taking a risk. And so that's always the case. As time goes by, you perhaps see things a little clearer than you may have in the younger days. And that's development and maturity and becoming better at what we do. But it's always a risk, and it'll never stop being a risk. And so I've been planting churches here. When we put up next week is Parramatta church planting. When we go back to planting Mick and Margaret Rotniak into Penrith, then the Edwards into Blacktown, and blah, 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 blah. All the green squares are churches currently alive and flourishing. All the grey squares are where we've planted a church that's no longer there. And so you realize it's a risk. And so every one of those people we planted out, we assumed, you're not going to just plant them out for no reason. We assume they're going to go there, get what's done, and if not, they come back for redirection, find out what's missing, re-equip themselves, and go out again. And so you do that, you get better at it, but there's no guarantees. Very good. We'll leave it right there. Have church in about 5 minutes.